Thank you so much for joining me once again. I am Dab, and I'm going to be going over contracts with you today, as I think it's a feature in the game that is very underappreciated. Let's go ahead and jump right on into that. And as always, before we begin here, make sure to leave a like, comment, ring the bell, and of course, subscribe so that way you can get notification on any new content that I add. So, contracts. If you're on a small server like me, maybe on a larger server, it's different. But contracts are a thing that I see being used kind of rarely. But then again, maybe everyone got what they needed and no one's using it anymore. But the things about contracts that you definitely need to know is right now it is very much a buyer's market compared to a seller's market. But there are ways that us as sellers can manage this without having to worry about getting ripped off. One of the major things is, for example, I'm going to use the Elemental Lariat. It's an item in high demand with a BOE recipe. Right now on the auction house, on my server, it's 2 million gold to buy the recipe. The mats, roughly, if I give a value to some of these items, because the Spark of Ingenuity you get on a weekly, there's no way to really farm it right now, and it's not a tradable resource. I estimated it at having about a 10,000 gold value. Primal Chaos, I gave about 1,000. They're much easier to get, but 1,000 seems about fair for it. Of course, the Shimmering Clasps, right now, with all the materials on my server, it's about 54 gold for the two of them. The Illimited Diamond goes for about 27,000 gold for a gold version of it, and the Elemental Harmony was at 630 gold. That's a total of about 67,000 gold. The thing to know about contracts is, as the seller, do your research on the mats. And if it's a BOE recipe, on how much the recipe is as well. The reason for that is the contract should be a fair price for what we're getting. That means, just like as when you go to a restaurant, they should be leaving a fair tip, normally between 10%, 15%, or 20%. 15, 20 being the ideal range. Let's not be cheap. The reason for this being so high is because what you're paying for is the labor, just like if you repair a car. So if you only pay me 100 gold to make this, I will never make the money back from buying said recipe. I'm just going to go ahead and show you some math here. So of course, the contract price, if we go off of the overall of adding it all together, we'll be looking at about 200,000 gold, at the lowest, about 400,000 gold at its highest. That's going with everything added together. Not ready for that. So that means if you post this recipe or a contract and it is 100 gold, anybody out there that is the seller or the creator, do not create that item for that player. Do not. They are ripping you off exceedingly. At the same time, if every seller in the game does this, it forces the buyers then to jack up their prices so that way they can get people to create it. Because if you think that I'm going to make you an Elemental Lariat at 1,000 gold when I'm going to have to make that like 200,000 times, it's not going to happen. It's not. No one should be doing that. Now, if the recipe is something that I would have just gotten naturally over time, I'd probably say 10% of the overall, 10, 15, or 20% once again for the overall mats. Which, once again, go do your research, both for the buyers, looking at the price of the mats on the auction house for what you can, and getting a rough estimate. Put that in the price. If it's a recipe that requires BOE, check the price of that on the auction house too, because once again, if a player has to buy that recipe, they're going to have to be able to make their gold back. And as a note to the crafter, high resourcefulness gives you back any excess mats that are tradable materials. So if they're making something like Infurious Hide, or using something that requires Infurious Hide, because right now I'm using that as a reference because on my server it goes for about 1,600 gold. If your resourcefulness procs, any leftover materials belong to you. They do not go back to the buyer. They become your mat, which is also a godsend for materials that are expensive. So keep that in mind when you're doing contracts. Continue putting them out there, but do it at a fair price. Do not try to rip off the seller or the creator because they're going out of their way. Now, if you build a reputation with them, hit them up. Send them more things. Maybe then offer that person a discount. But once again, if you're posting things that are too low, don't even bother putting the contract in, because as us as sellers, we need to be more intense on you guys and make sure that you do not get the item that you want for super cheap. As always, thank you for stopping by. Make sure to come and follow me on Twitch at _Dab86.